Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning into No Safe Seat. Earlier this year, we were really excited to be able to tour this film around to cinemas all around the country. In addition, 141 people put up their hands to host screenings in their houses, which is really great. This is the first time we've made it widely available online. We wanted to make sure everyone had an opportunity to see it before the election. However, before you settle in to watch it, I just wanted to flag a few things have changed since we locked down the final edit of the film. Federal politics is obviously a dynamic and fluid, fast-moving environment. And when we finalised the final edit of this documentary, the Liberal Party were ascendant, their primary vote was increasing, and they were on track for a very significant swing on election day. It looks like since then, some of that momentum has reversed. What I really hope we're seeing is the rejection of Trump-style politics being imported to Australia by the coalition. Of course, polls can be wrong, and we've seen that before, so we're not taking anything for granted. What we do know is that the incumbent independent MPs in our parliament are under huge amounts of pressure from the Liberal Party, but also their attack groups like the Coal Lobby Front Group Australians for Prosperity. So they need to work really hard to hold on to those seats. And then those that are challenging still have big mountains to climb. So we're not taking anything for granted, and we are doing everything we possibly can to back these independent campaigns right up to election day. Either way, we'll know the outcome of the election really soon. So hope you sit back and enjoy No Safe Seat.
I'm going to start by getting you to tell me what's the most important issue this election?
I have two teenagers and I worry about the world that they're inheriting.
We have got a finite time here on Earth, and it baffles and then just leads me to despair about where we're heading.
We'll become adults in a world that we can't live in anymore, that won't be habitable.
I think if you care about climate change, if you're concerned about climate change, it can be really difficult to know what you can do as an individual, what action you can take.
And at the moment, we've got a lot of people in the parliament whose allegiances lie with the fossil fuel industry.
I mean, we should be scared when they can walk into the offices of lawmakers and shape policy because their pockets are deeper than ours.
I think the tragedy of it is that we do know what we need to do to fix the problem.
All the bird life in the world is descended from the bird life that began in Australia, New Zealand, and Papua New Guinea. So it's really, this is where song began in Australia. So I've got a lot of mosaics of Australian native birds that I've done because I want the archaeologists of the future to know in 2,000 years' time what bird species were here, because I'm sure they're not going to be here. And that's the sort of thing that drove me into supporting the independence movement. And it's the same for so many people, that concern about what we're doing to the planet.
Australia is one of the world's biggest exporters of fossil fuels. For decades, climate has been one of the nation's most contentious political issues. As successive governments have failed to take meaningful action, communities across the country have been experiencing the real impacts of global warming.
You hear people talk about it and then you become a parent and you do think about the world that they're going to be living in, and it does make it far more real. It's that feeling, isn't it, of like your children one day saying to you, so what did you do? What did you do to have impact, to change this, you know?
In many ways, the climate fight has become a fight for the future, right? And it makes you more motivated to ensure that the people who are leading the country actually get it.
In the lead up to the 2022 election, frustrations with the status quo drove thousands of people across the country to take matters into their own hands. Anne Kapling, who lives in the Melbourne electorate of Kooyong, was one of them.
There were a lot of us who were complete strangers And we all said to each other at some point, if we ever get out of lockdown, let's meet in the local library and decide what we're going to do about this.
This was the first step in a chain reaction that caused one of the biggest upsets in Australian political history.
Tell me about your role in Climate 200.
Yeah, well, people often mischaracterise me as the moneybags behind the movement, but really I was just one of 11,200 who helped make Climate 200 happen at the last election. We had people from every one of the 151 electorates in Australia. A third of them were from rural and regional areas.
Phil was another volunteer looking for opportunities to make a difference at the election.
We had, I think, about 185 kitchen table conversations up and down the length of Cowper.
That's, I think, a big strength behind the movement is that every one of the campaigns started in the local area, so no central organisation. There was no one starting these campaigns except for locals.
There's a specific approach that community independent campaigns take, and it always starts with the community listening.
Once a group has finished their kitchen table conversations, they begin the search for a candidate who can champion the values of their community.
Kooyong needs an independent candidate. We got more than 30 applications, but there was a superstar who stood out among that group.
Ultimately, it takes their community telling them over and over again, we're disappointed, we know you are too. Please do this for us. Please stand for us.
I was approached to do it, and at first I said no, but I stood eventually because, you know, I want to see climate actions. I want to see more women in Parliament. I don't think that should be controversial. I want to see, you know, 50-50.
So Climate 200 comes in quite late in the piece and helps these campaigns scale so that the independent campaigns have got a fighting chance against the major party machines. Pretty audacious plan, but it worked.
Independents march into Parliament. The nation has voted for change. The two parties' stranglehold has been seriously weakened.
We did it!
Sophie Scoms has taken McKellar.
The next seat to change hands is North Sydney, Kylie Tink. Till.
Dave Sharma, gone.
Allegra Spender at her party.
And Monique Ryan will be the new member for Kooyong.
Kate Chaney has taken the Perth-based seat of Curtin.
Congratulations on a successful campaign.
Zoe Daniel has defeated Tim Wilson in Goldstein.
Can anyone even believe this is happening?
It's a difficult night for Liberals and Nationals around the country.
Let this be a new wave of politics, a new wave of opportunity.
That night resulted in the biggest crossbench since 1934.
Our climate has changed.
It was the most fun thing I've ever done. And then we had to actually represent Kooyong and do the things that we'd pledged to the community that we would do.
I think the independents are having a massive impact in Parliament. I think they're addressing things that Australian people actually care about.
2.9 million Australians waking up this morning knowing that they owed less in HECS.
It's called the National Anti-Corruption Commission.
This has been 10 years in the calling for, and almost all of the running has come from the crossbench.
Use your authority from the most powerful office in this land, and please speak as a man to men.
I think they have changed the discourse that we're seeing in Parliament, and they're forcing climate-related issues onto the agenda.
We as Australians have to answer the question, what is our role in climate justice?
I rise to call on the government to put an end to the threat of oil and gas drilling off the coast of Manly Beach to Newcastle.
Climate change is the biggest threat to national security, but our laws say it's not relevant to environmental approval processes.
I believe these changes help us make progress towards emissions reduction.
This amendment will allow the Australian people to hold the government to account if they fail to mitigate against the risks of climate change.
Australian politics is very non-transparent, and I feel that independents bring that level of democracy back to the people that we have lost somewhere along the way.
Documentary evidence of widespread fraud was in the possession of a minister in the previous government, and that minister did nothing about it.
How can the government guarantee that any future appointments to public institutions will not end up as more jobs for mates?
I've been lucky enough to meet many of the candidates. What I see is a commitment to evidence-based policy. They're not beholden to party politics, and they respond to their electorate.
I do think there's really deep-seated frustration with the two-party system. There's a real lack of trust. How do we solve these thorny issues around the energy transition and climate? And so part of the role of independence is to force the major parties to create policy which is for the benefit of the country, not for the benefit of them.
And we have, I think, as a crossbench, pushed the government to go further than they had committed to do. You know, they hold each other to account purely based on politics rather than based on the policy and what actually matters to community. You know, we finally have fuel efficiency standards, which is something that, you know, myself and others really pushed on, you know, coming to Parliament, and Labor were too afraid, frankly, at the start to do that.
I remember just after the election, Zoe said, oh, the climate wars are over, and I thought, I'm not sure about that. And it has turned out that, of course, they're not.
Tonight, the Australian people have voted for change.
The start of a new government brought with it high hopes of an ambitious climate agenda.
So many of us stood there on election night feeling so passionate about what Albanese was saying. But I think a lot of people feel really let down, and I'm definitely amongst them.
Together, we can end the climate wars.
2 years ago, I actually still had very high hopes that Labor would make a difference. I thought that they would. They promised the world.
Together, we can take advantage of the opportunity for Australia to be a renewable energy superpower.
They're still saying it, but in the background, they're not doing it at all. They're still approving the coal mines and sending gas overseas.
Koala habitat, it will be cleared to make way for coal mine expansions.
The Albanese government is backing gas through to 2050 and beyond.
While the Labor government has certainly been an improvement, particularly on domestic climate policy, they're no angels, and they have been in many ways as supportive of the expansion of the fossil fuel industry as the Liberal National Party before them. Both the International Energy Agency and the IPCC say that if we want to have a safe climate, we can have no new coal, oil and gas projects. And so the fact that the Labor Party keeps doing that is a real indication that the funding they get from the fossil fuel industry is having a big impact on their priorities.
There were also hopes that the Liberal National Party's devastating losses would leave them no choice but to adopt a more moderate platform.
Two new leaders rise from the ashes of defeat and begin redefining their parties.
He's built his career on denial and division. If Peter Dutton were Prime Minister, I'm worried that we would follow in the footsteps of Donald Trump.
Concerningly, they are looking to import Trump-style tactics.
What I'm fearful of is othering people like me, finding a scapegoat for things that are not working.
And they just stoke these culture wars and make people angry at each other. What marginal progress, if you can even call it that, under the Labor government is going to be thrown out completely if Dutton gets majority leadership.
His nuclear policy is a fantasy. Every expert in the country is telling him that it will not work. It is a stalling tactic that is backed by the coal lobby.
We'll soon hear from another outstanding leader, the Honourable Peter Dutton.
Would you please thank Mrs Reinhardt, a true leader, and I want to say thank you very much for your friendship.
Gina Reinhardt is the richest person in Australia. She has incredible wealth and resources to throw at political players who do her bidding.
Brace yourself for all the dirty money that's set to pour into the polluting parties in the run-up to the election.
When you're getting a donation from a company, there's a clear quid pro quo that's expected.
We need to stop taxpayer funding of unreliable green energy and make our bank accounts great again.
Here is the withdrawal from the Paris Climate Treaty.
President Trump is not somebody to be scared of, but somebody that we can work very closely with.
Peter Dutton is vowing to ditch Australia's 2030 climate target.
Just love the saying, drill baby drill.
What we're seeing in Australia is state capture by the fossil fuel companies.
We will slash project approval times. We will defund the Environmental Defenders Office. We will limit the ability of third parties to challenge decisions under the EPBC Act. We will do all these things because I want to turbocharge mining in Australia.
If we see a Dutton majority government, we will see massive steps backwards on climate action, taking us back decades.
We cannot afford to let that happen. And I think independence the single best way that we can prevent that from happening.
This brings us to the impending 2025 federal election.
Let's go live to Kylie Tink, her seat of North Sydney being abolished by the AEC.
It has been one of the greatest honours of my life to represent the seat of North Sydney.
Kylie's been an amazing community representative, and the AEC's decision is a real blow.
With the loss of North Sydney, the pro-climate crossbench is down a seat well before a single vote has even been cast.
Our strategy leading into the next election has a defensive component and an offensive component. On the defensive side, we're helping the independents who are already in Parliament to hold on to their seats.
They're ramping up. They've got, Peter Dutton and Angus Taylor and all these people coming into the electorate, saying, hey, we want this back.
The opposition will this week launch its Teals Revealed campaign.
And it's going to get tough and it's going to get dirty, and you feel it already.
Over the Christmas break of 2024, the coal lobby funded attack ads targeting community independents.
The incumbents are on a knife edge.
Nationally, we are seeing a swing towards the Liberal National Party, and based off the trajectory of current publicly available polling, it looks to be in the order of around 6%.
A nationwide 6.5% swing would see Peter Dutton become Prime Minister with a comfortable majority. Even if the incumbents are successful, it will still not be enough to fend off the threat of a Dutton majority government.
Climate 200 needs an offensive as well as a defensive strategy. So we need to have that security base of as many independents in Parliament.
If you look back at the history books, it generally takes 2 election cycles for an independent to break through, which is what makes us really excited about those independents who came so close last election.
While many Australians know the names and faces of those who won in 2022, far less attention has been paid to the seats where independent candidates made impressive gains. There are 6 seats in New South Wales and Victoria where Climate 200 is backing candidates running for a second or third time. On the New South Wales North Coast, local nurse Kaz Heiss is preparing for her second attempt to win the seat of Cowper from the Nationals MP, Pat Conahan.
Kaz is so close. She got within 2.3% last time.
If she had a few more months, she would have won that seat.
And we only need 2,600 votes.
In Bradfield, Nicolette Buller is preparing to challenge a new Liberal candidate following the resignation of former Communications Minister Paul Fletcher.
I'll put our community first, not a political party.
In 2022, Nicolette's campaign recorded the biggest swing against a Liberal in any seat.
Campaigning in Bradfield has given me a community I never thought that existed. What I love about Nicolette is that she spends so much time with her constituents, understanding what our major issues are. I think Bradfield is ready for an independent candidate. Yeah.
In Wannon, Alex Dyson is preparing for his 3rd time running against Dan Tehan, Shadow Minister for Immigration.
It's always the first question, why are you doing it? And I think it was born where in year 3 I learned about the greenhouse effect in Mr. Ryan's class. Oh my God, I just saw Mr. Ryan, g'day.
Dyson's first campaign in 2019 took a slightly less orthodox approach to electioneering.
First time around in 2019, he ran that campaign on a shoestring. He announced his policies through interpretive dance and jumped into the bay. But in 2022, he gave it a more serious crack. Because of how well he did last time, he will have a much deeper penetration of his name recognition in the community as a result. He's much more of a focus for us this time.
The hope is by the election time, I would have visited everywhere twice.
In Casey, the former head of Sustainability Victoria, Claire Ferris-Miles, is hoping to build on the momentum of her 2022 campaign.
And I'm here to speak up for our community, not for corporations or party politics.
One of the interesting things about Casey is that the Liberal primary vote is really low, so big changes afoot there.
It is a campaign of connections, a campaign with the community at the centre.
The final seats are Monash and Calare.
I'm running to make Monash a place where we can all thrive.
Hi, I'm Kate Hook. Welcome to Calare, where our community is strong, resilient and ready for change.
Last election, Kate Hook, an Orange local and local renewable energy advocate, ran against Nationals MP Andrew Gee. In 2023, the National Party MP left the party and this time is also running against the Nationals pre-selected candidate.
What that's doing is massively depressing the National Party vote and really breaking that one open as a 3-cornered contest. And so she has a really good chance there as well.
And with your support,
community lawyer Deb Leonard will encounter a similar 3-way contest in the seat of Monash.
that will again depress the Liberal National primary further and provide an opportunity for Deb to go through the middle.
Nothing will change if we don't change how we vote. This election put our community first.
These 6 seats are all in contention to expand the pro-climate crossbench. The question is, will that support be enough?
I had to put up a video yesterday because there were some flyers.
The Liberal Party have just letterboxed the entire Wannon electorate with flyers trying to scare people.
I wonder if they had to Photoshop out the emu that was also in this picture of me from my Instagram. 3 weeks before that, Senator Jacinta Price had released a video.
Alex Dyson is really a Green pretending to be an independent.
I just didn't expect for truth not to be part of the equation.
That's why the help from Climate 200 sort of makes a difference. I went to say it levels the playing field because we have 1 staff member. They have many, many staff members.
Unfortunately, you can't really run a campaign without the resources to do it. And to try to tackle the behemoths that are the 2 major parties, you really need to be able to fight fire with fire.
I mean, the amount of money that the coalition is pouring into these seats that are now held by Teals because they're frightened just really shows how powerful the community independents are, particularly the women.
They're in fact almost all privileged white women. They're Simon's angels, really. And most of these Simon's angels...
As a person who gave up a year of her life as a volunteer to run Monique's campaign, I find that deeply offensive. It's misogynistic.
You can see regular Australians really don't want to get involved in that. It's why they tune out of politics. And so if you can be focusing on the issues that they care about, then it'll take care of itself.
Even with these 6 seats providing an expanded crossbench if they win, based on current projections, a Dutton majority government is still possible.
Honestly, the thing that keeps me hopeful, I think the fact that we've seen the safer seats in the country turn independent shows us that anything is possible, really.
Yeah, if people are fed up enough with what they're being given and are dissatisfied enough with the status quo, as we're seeing in Australia, with the right sort of support and backing, the independence movement could really break open Australian politics in a really mainstream way.
Across the country, communities have seen the success of the independence movement and have been busy setting up groups to launch their own independent candidate. So Climate 200 is looking to support a cohort of brand new community independents.
There's a real good chance some independents can win first time around, including here on the Gold Coast with Okana Murray Bartlett. I live here in McPherson, so I'm volunteering for Okana and having a great time doing it.
In Flinders, another brand new candidate is running a highly competitive campaign.
Hi, I'm Ben Smith. I'm running as an independent to help our communities grow and thrive.
He's the Victorian Father of the Year, a really impressive individual.
There are also fresh community independent campaigns challenging Liberal Party leadership.
I'm Michelle Millthorpe. For too long, the major parties have taken us for granted.
I'm excited about Farah because Susan Lee is a really disappointing politician. Michelle Millthorpe is representing the community, something that Susan Lee has unfortunately not done.
If you're ready for real change, join in. Farah is worth fighting for, and now is our moment.
On the outskirts of Brisbane, even Peter Dutton's own community is making its voice heard.
Independent Ellie Smith launched her campaign today in Peter Dutton's seat of Dickson.
All it takes is your vote.
The challenge is converting all this local community energy into real electoral outcomes.
If we were in a position to support 30 campaigns to the extent we did the 7 that was successful at the last election, I believe that 30 campaigns could win.
We've made lots of progress in the last 2.5 years on the things that mattered to us, whether that be climate change, integrity, gender equity, all of those things. But there's a lot more to do.
I think this is the opportunity for us to cement climate action, and actually, hopefully, I hope if we can do this, we can actually stop the climate wars. And the further we go, the harder it is to turn back.
On the other side, we have some of the most incredible renewable energy resources in the world. There is this win-win here for the community for individuals and for the world, and we can be right in the centre of achieving it. We just need to have the right sort of political leadership and vision.
My hope is that the community comes together, and that means that we can support them all to the fullest extent and ensure that they can buy everything they need to, from big billboards, TV ads, digital ads, and the all-important dog bandanas.
We could not have won without the help that we received, and that gave me, as a totally amateur campaign manager, the confidence that we could go out and spend some money on some things that we needed to spend on, and then we were off and flying.
I came to Climate 200 because it felt like a way that I could make a difference, and it was taking away that feeling of helplessness and hopelessness I was feeling.
Sometimes it overwhelms me and I go, but I guess that's when the Climate 200 came in, that maybe there's a glimmer of hope there. You know, an organisation out there and pulling together the grassroots people to actually make a difference.
It's important to remember that you're one of millions of people, and if you stay engaged and if you really commit to changing things, I think we absolutely can.
You can decide to take action. You can decide to become part of a community campaign, and that's just so powerful, a movement to be part of.
We engage with our communities and we hold the bastards honest. And this is a ground-up movement. It's something that the major parties fear. That's good.
I think the way that they've just been so fearless, challenging often safe Liberal seats, is a super brave thing to do.
I think Ali Segal said it on election night. This is the message. It's like, no seat is safe. No, you don't own any seat by right. If you don't represent your community, you should feel vulnerable.
The system that they represent is failing us, and it is broken.
We wanted more than mudslinging and power plays. We ran because we wanted government to be about people in our communities, not political parties preserving their power.
It's you, our incredible network of volunteers and supporters that make up our community movement. Every one of you embodies the spirit of community, dedication and hope that propels us forward.
When we genuinely come together as a community rather than a political organisation, we can see what the problems are and we can find solutions. So I guess I'm an optimist.
From the Sunshine Coast to Phillip Island, from Bondi to Perth and everywhere in between, local communities are coming together to challenge the big political parties. This is the fastest growing political movement in the country, one that will play a vital role in the 2025 federal election and well beyond.
You know, I think the movement's just getting started, really, and I hope that it goes on well after I've shuffled off this mortal coil.
Authorised by BFA Climate 200 Potts Point.